Hey, I'm Jax the Reviewer, you're the audience, and this is my Godzilla retrospective. Today, in the first line of this franchise, we're looking at 1956's Godzilla, King of the Monsters, the film that introduced the Western audience to Godzilla himself. This is an American cut of the original Godzilla film. It removes some footage and includes some new footage, and it's very different to the classic Godzillas we've all come to know and love. In recent years, we've seen a lot more of Godzilla fighting other kaiju. Well, in this film, we're going to see Godzilla face off against the Japanese military. It's very interesting to see because Godzilla is less a child-friendly character that we've seen with his son Minya, or Minilla, and instead he's actually more of a metaphor for the atomic bombs and the sort of nuclear holocaust that Japan suffered through. This is a capsule into Japanese culture at the time, and I think it's a beautiful way of looking at the nuclear dangers that were going on at the time. So, without further interruption, let's get straight into this review and look at this classic kaiju film that kick-started the kaiju genre. So with a flash of light, our title flies onto the screen, but you shouldn't be fooled. This isn't like any creature feature, like the creature from the Black Lagoon or the Mummy. See, the film really starts up in the aftermath of a critically destroyed Tokyo. Buildings are in rubble, fires remain burning, and a white American businessman is lay under falling debris. Wait, what? Yes, this is our protagonist, Steve Martin. No, not that Steve Martin.
You didn't look anything like Bowfinger.
You see, the copy that most of us Westerners have is actually changed. The American cut of this film, Godzilla King of the Monsters, has some very glaring changes to it. Most are very normal, you know, whether it's just the removal of certain Japanese characters and their replacement with Americans. The biggest case of this is Steve Martin, played by Raymond Burr. Now, he's supposed to be the insight for Westerners, so we have someone to relate to because I guess back then you couldn't relate to a Japanese person if you were British or American. I don't know, but the point is, he's our main character that we follow through this story, and besides being kind of pointless, he does serve the role of giving us this insight into the world, and hey, it can be helpful in some cases. This opening remains highly faithful to the dark subject matter it aims to portray. The overcrowded hospitals, bleak imagery, and dark atmosphere really emphasise the dire conditions Japan underwent at the time. Akira Ifukube's score, let's hope I pronounced that right, is wonderful. He does a great job encapsulating this sort of dark atmosphere, and he really brings emphasis to the Godzilla character later on. It's no wonder that he came back for many of the other Godzilla films. He really is an icon of this franchise. The footage of survivors is powerful, and the room is laced with the sound of a crying child.
I don't know how many hours went by before an auxiliary hospital unit found me. I knew it was daylight. I was surprised to be alive.
This dark atmosphere really grabs you, and it's no wonder it stands out among maybe some of the later Godzilla films. Here we were introduced to Emiko Yamane, played by Momoko Kochi, a young volunteer at the hospital and daughter of Japanese paleontologist Kyo Yamane. And of course, our brave hero Steve has the courage to demand Emiko come to him, even though we just saw her helping out a dying child. Go, Steve! We soon find out that Steve is heading to Japan because he aims to have an interview with Dr. Sarazawa, played by Akiko Hirate. He's a scientist who is known for his mysterious experiments. On a side note, Sarazawa is actually engaged to Emiko due to an arranged childhood marriage. Now, it isn't long until we get our first Godzilla attack, and it's actually a pretty cool one. Sure, we don't see much of him, but the ominous sounds are still there, and you understand the presence of him. The flashing lights and screaming people as we see more natural disaster than actual physical representations of Godzilla. It's very much reminiscent of the atomic bomb and the themes the movie is aiming to present. The The people are screaming for their lives and the ship is being pulled apart. It's the first demonstration of this kind of destruction in this film, and it really drags you in as you begin to panic for these people. But enough of that, we return to Steve as he leaves the plane. Whew. After leaving the plane, Steve must speak to Officer Tomo Iwanaga, who explains the mysteriously damaged ship. Steve explains that those who did survive the event passed away shortly after due to mysterious burns, continuing this atomic bomb analogy. It's at this point you realise Tomo's only role in this film is to translate for Steve and the Western audiences. He's literally not much of a character and more just a means of translating the original Japanese footage and presenting it to us, the Western viewer. Although this does make you wonder, why leave in the original Japanese dialogue at all if you feel it just needs to be translated? However, they decide to take off to Odo Island, an island full of skeptical natives that may have seen the events of the missing ship. These natives are less than excited that the non-natives are coming to their island. Deciding to take a break and take a look at the work of the natives on this island, they look at the custom dance of the Richard Nixon fan club. However, nothing as it seems as the forest falls victim to a thunderstorm. The scene is actually really strong, the visuals are striking, and by avoiding showing Godzilla, you really feel the tension of the scene. The destructive path of Godzilla is really clear, and the shot of civilians looking up really creates a sense of immense scale, without even seeing Godzilla himself, keeping the mystery alive. Back in Tokyo, witnesses disagree on what they saw. What caused the destruction is actually kind of a mystery to them, although they agree that it was caused by a living being. This is important as, although it's a reference specifically to Godzilla being a living creature, you do wonder if it's also a meta-reference to the living people who created the atomic bombs, as it obviously adds to the theme of the film itself. But no time for waiting, they head straight back to Odo Island, where Amiko meets Marine Officer Hideo Ogata, played by Akira Takarada. And the two hit it off really well. Soon becoming attracted to one another, this forms a love triangle between Amiko, Ogata, and Serizawa. Once reaching the island, the natives point out that Godzilla did leave these large footprints as evidence of his immense size.
Here's your sample. Study it.
What sample?
You're standing in it.
And then, at the 28-minute mark, we get our first look at the OG Godzilla himself. He's immense in power, and his blood-curdling roar draws the natives out. People are running, screaming, and with all of his immense power, Godzilla builds up, and as he does, he gets ready to leave. Yeah, he just sort of leaves. But he'll be back. In a meeting between the scientists, it's discovered that Godzilla used to be around in the Jurassic period, moving on both land and sea. However, he has been awoken by recent uses of the H-bomb. It's vague whether he was produced or awoken by the radioactive H-bombs, but overall it's decided that they're going to deal with Godzilla by using exactly what brought him into the world. The H-bomb. You see, the plan is to kill Godzilla with exactly what created him. The atomic bomb. The radioactivity and forceful impact should be enough to wipe him out, with exactly what brought him into the world. We are shown Emiko and Serizawa experimenting with something. We know it's dangerous and enough to make her cry, but we don't know exactly what it is. It's left vague. As well as this, we're introduced to Emiko's father, who has miraculously learned how to talk, without using his own lips.
What is it?
They are so wrong. Godzilla should not be destroyed. He should be studied. Amiko, please, leave me alone.
Hi.
The people of Japan feel a new sense of relief with a plan to kill Godzilla, and to celebrate, they decide to have a party on a Titanic. And what do you know, Godzilla shows up to mess shit up. Except, it's not all bad. As the government is getting ready to fight back against Godzilla, we get that pure Godzilla theme that stayed through the series. Not a single piece of music could get you more pumped for this kind of action, and it's no wonder it was an icon of this series. However, the government is helpless as Godzilla pushes through like a force of nature.
Now he's making his way toward the city's main line of defense.
Yeah, he is, just very, very slowly. I will admit that Steve gets kind of grating in this scene. Having him perform a commentary over the events is kind of a cheap way of including him when all we want to see is this mass destruction of Japan. The destruction is brilliant, and so to cut back to him constantly, it kinda gets irritating after a while. But boy is this destruction good. Buildings are burning, cars are flipping, tanks are being smashed into each other, fire engines are disintegrating in his atomic breath, people are running in fear.
Dogs and cats living together, mass hysteria!
Every piece of destruction is given emphasis, as you feel each miniature take on real life aspects. The destruction is beautiful, and the sound design is key in this. Each miniature feels like it's really there through this gorgeous sound design. The use of black and white in the evacuation scene is brilliant. It makes it feel like a documentary and you feel the realistic struggle of these people. And a weird thing about this scene is that Godzilla seems to have a real issue with bridges. We're told what Serizawa's experiment was, and it's an oxygen destroyer, capable of skinning even the largest number of fish.
That's a lot of fish.
Serizawa is given a very powerful dilemma. Does he release this mass destructive weapon into the public? Or does he let Godzilla continue his reign of destruction, leaving countless lives to pass away? This scene is particularly striking as the choirs sing out in remembrance to the Godzilla's victims, but also the victims of the nuclear warfare that really happened. It's very tense and hits you personally, but it also gives a stunning backdrop for Serizawa's internal debate as he fights with himself over what to choose. Serizawa makes his decision. He's going to use his weapon just this once, but he burns his research notes, condemning the idea that anyone used these apocalyptic weapons in any other case, spreading the message of anti-nuclear weaponry. Finding Godzilla's resting body, Serizawa and Ogatu are sent underwater to activate the oxygen destroyer. However, after sending Ogatu back up, Serizawa cuts his own cord, putting an end to this love triangle. With that, Ogatu and Amiku are free to embrace each other in love as Serizawa is perished, with his own weapon killing him and Godzilla, bringing an end to the first Godzilla film in this franchise. Godzilla King of the Monsters is definitely a must-watch for all kaiju fans. Not only did it kickstart the kaiju genre, it may not have been the first kaiju film, but definitely is responsible in a large part for bringing these into creation. But it is also a key film as it's the first Godzilla film, and it also encapsulates this cinematic approach for Godzilla, something that maybe the later films missed out on a little. Above this, Godzilla King of the Monsters also introduced many of the possible tropes that became popular in the kaiju genre, whether it's the native island, which we'll see in Kong and films such as that, but it also introduced radioactivity and how that mutates certain creatures to make them giant. For that, I think this film is very important in the kaiju echelons. As well as this, it does a beautiful job encapsulating the mindset of the Japanese during Hiroshima and Nagasaki. As well as being a damn good monster movie, the direction is wonderful. A scene worth commending is the scene where Serizawa introduces the oxygen destroyer. Although at that point, we didn't actually know what the oxygen destroyer was. It's a very eerie scene. The use of almost Stanley Kubrick level shots really creates tension in that scene, and there is no score to it, creating this very realistic vibe to it. As well as this, the activation of the oxygen destroyer is very uncomfortable, and it brings a brilliant flavour to this film, rather than being like the generic cartoonish Godzilla films we will come to see. However, that's not to say all characters get very good development. A problem with this film is that the characters are not developed very well. But then again, if you're coming to Godzilla for the human characters, you're gonna leave very sore after pretty much most of these films. Another commendable point about this film is the fact that it uses real Japanese dialogue from the original film. I feel this shows a respect for the original Godzilla film, and it shows that although this is an American edit, they appreciate what the original film did. And I feel like I can also appreciate that, because I think this film really takes that into account. There are no subtitles though, and this can cause some confusion, leading to a lot of needing for translation from other characters. Another awkward thing this brings on is the fact that scenes with Steve are mixed in with footage from the Japanese original. To achieve this, they try and use lookalikes to act like the characters are actually interacting when the actors never even met. A problem with this is that the lookalikes are told to look away from the camera, so the audience can't actually tell they're lookalikes. This is big trouble, as in some scenes it can be quite comedically awkward, especially if you're looking with a keen eye. Besides some awkward editing and the Americanization having some issues, I do think this is a brilliant film. Definitely one of the greatest Godzilla films to come out of Toho, and overall I'd give it 8 terrified natives out of 10. Definitely worth a watch, especially for kaiju fans. Thank you for watching. And now I'd like to point out what I think was the funniest moment of the week. With Godzilla King of the Monsters being such a serious film, this isn't going to be as funnier as maybe some of the weirder moments in the campier films, but I still wanted to pick out something that kind of made me laugh during the film. Now for me, this is going to be the scene where Godzilla tried to take down a giant tower with lots of civilians in it. It was supposed to be quite a serious scene, but it ended up being quite comedic because the effects are more than dated, especially by 1957 standards. The image behind them hardly drags you into the realism, pulling you out of the film, but with a good laugh to it. As I said, hopefully in later films I'll be able to point out even funnier scenes than this as I make this a weekly segment. I'll see you all again with my review of Godzilla Raids Again, or down the line any of my future reviews of Godzilla. Thank you for watching. I've been Jax the Reviewer. Goodbye.